Hey everybody, welcome to your weekly energy forecast. I have spent the last half an hour trying to, post-meditation, get into the right state of mind to record this. I have to tell you, it is extremely difficult. As we discussed sort of peripherally last week, there are an extraordinary amount of square energies taking place, which right now what we're really experiencing is the exact square of Jupiter to both Mars and Uranus. So Mars, of course, fiery, aggressive. It can represent frustration, it can represent the tension point. I mean, obviously tension multiplied by tension in square is and Jupiter, of course, which exacerbates and magnifies any energy. And Uranus being the unexpected, the volatile, the revolutionary. And of course, on a macro level, that tension is sitting waiting to happen. We're just waiting for things to explode. So I'm starting by telling you about those because they really do set the tone for this current period of time that we're in. And the expectation should be that this will only be more intense in the coming days. In fact, by the middle of this coming week, I think we're all going to require being in the power of self-observation in order to survive and thrive through these extremely difficult energies. So, I'm going to discuss that a little bit more in terms of the general flow of the reading, which I have not pulled because I tried pulling cards for the last little while and was unable to get the cards to cooperate, and eventually I gave into the idea that they want me to pull cards on camera for whatever reason, and that may be 3 cards, it may be 100, who knows. But I did pull our oracle cards, so we will get into those. Mostly actually, in addition to that, astrologically, we do also have to focus on the fact that, we've got that Neptune squaring the nodes of the moon. This intensifies from here through to the middle of February, and subsequently all of our intuitive power to be able to differentiate truth from lies, our BS detector, is being seriously challenged. And as we've already discussed in these changing dynamics, reality is shifting drastically in terms of how we perceive it and how we experience it. And the only thing that we can really truthfully trust is our inner knowing about ourselves. Everything else is up for grabs. Everything else seems entirely fabricated. I think Noam Chomsky spoke of, fabricating or manufacturing consent, and you can also manufacture dissent, of course. And this is the construct of 3D. This is what the Matrix essentially is. In case any of you are still wondering, which I doubt is the case, you have to scratch so far beneath the surface before you actually come to a true understanding of what our life experience is. And I'm not even talking about the interdimensional aspects. I'm talking specifically about how we experience reality. Everything that we think is edified and a construct in our reality is false. Our values are manufactured through the television, through the internet, through purveyors of culture, through corporations, through governments, pretty much one and the same at this point. And for the vast majority of people, this means nothing, because the sheep will submit to the status quo. The sheep will submit to the confines of prescribed standards that serve an agenda outside of themselves, that they are too lazy to essentially actually take the time to explore. And we're coming to a breaking point with that. We're coming to a breaking point because not only do none of those institutions actually serve any purpose any longer, they've sort of brought it upon themselves, right? Haven't they? This pandemic, this imprisonment of humanity through technology, through control mechanisms of fear, authoritarianism. These only have purpose when there is something to contain us from. If we no longer have an existence or an identity out in the world around us, then they don't control anything for us. So this is really why the nodes of the moon with Neptune are fucking with us so bad right now, because they're pushing us karmically into a deeper understanding of just how enormous the lie is. And that's very disturbing for the vast majority of people to experience. And generally, I think it's easier for us to turn a blind eye and pretend that things are just fine. That it's not necessary to fight, that it's not necessary to uphold the values from within. And I suppose that's really what all of this is about. If you're so overpowered by the narrative from the outside, then you can't really hear the voice within. And that's basically what the information era, age, whatever you want to call it, has really done to the vast majority of people. Think of cultures that are not exposed to the money grab, that are not exposed to the technocratic push. They're still at one with nature. They would rather kick a ball around, or for leisure, when they have time for leisure, or play with their family or their friends, or tell stories. This is just, we in such a short period of time have lost complete sight of our very nature. And the universe is not having it, and is essentially telling us that we have no choice but to wake the fuck up. So, welcome to reality. And the real truth of what that is that I'm trying to say is, for all the fear, for all the darkness, for all the restriction that we are subjected to in the collective conscience right now, there is the ability and the opportunity to entrust that same energy and focus onto the inner journey, to truly take stock and understand the wealth that exists within us, that all of these tools exist within us. I had a conversation earlier today with a person that obviously I'm extremely close to and and I love very much. But the defeatism in the tone of this person telling me that they don't have the willpower that I have over, let's say, negative habits or something. Well, this is just a narrative that we tell ourselves, and that we've probably told ourselves over and over again, and it doesn't actually even come from us. It's probably some conditioning from a parent or some asshole in our lives when we were growing who put that idea of restriction upon ourselves, and we've just perpetuated it. And this is the type of situation that I'm talking about, where we have the ability to determine our own experience. There is no limitation on our willpower other than what we tell ourselves. There is no limitation on our capacity for love other than, in essence, our own desire to deprive ourselves of it. And that applies to everyone. I include myself very much in that. It's like the monkey mind. When I'll give you the example. Earlier today, I just finished a meditation and I felt great. I felt serene. I felt centered and prepared for my reading, our reading. And then every little noise, every little disturbance, whether it was the traffic going by, or an air conditioner going on, or whatever it could be, that became what my monkey mind was focusing on. Now, of course, that happens to all of us all the time, right? But it's a perfect example of just how much control we have over ourselves and our feelings. And again, observing ourselves, observing our thoughts, observing how we, what the thought is, having the ability to actually go through that process of, here's the feeling I'm having, here's the thought I'm having, externalizing this thought would lead to blah, blah, blah. Is that worth it? In the sense that, will it give me peace of mind? Will I be at peace with myself? Which, at the end of the day, is the driving force behind anything in our lives. I mean, anything other than that is your ego. That is just your ego grabbing for power, grabbing for control, grabbing for authority, grabbing for whatever it is that you in your psychology resonates with that. Peace is necessary in order to love. Self-love and love those around us. So all of our decisions should be based upon what gives us peace first, right? And that's a big part of this lesson, and it's a big part of the Neptunian energy, it's a big part of the Neptune with the nose energy, because all of that is being tested. In fact, all of these squares really come down to that, particularly, Jupiter with Mars, because it's almost like we're being forced to see just how explosive, how enormous something relatively small can become, in order for us to understand that scale is a choice too. Jupiter lends its power to us if we can harness it to amplify the things that need amplifying in order for us to have peace. But, of course, what we associate it with is war and fighting and anger and all of those things. So, because we empower that side of it, Jupiter, I think I was talking about Mars. If I said Jupiter instead of Mars, I was talking about Mars just now. Jupiter comes along with this, this intense square to basically say, take a look at it. Take a look at your process. Because if you're feeling those feelings, and I'm feeling them right now, then that's inside. The stimulant may be outside, but what is causing that is inside. And you, again, have the power to change that. Either by stepping away, by changing your perspective, by having a different approach to something, maybe even postponing something a little bit, as I did with my reading, as I do a lot with my readings, actually. Because it does have to be the right time, the right mood, the right atmosphere. Anyway, that combined with Uranus, I'm just saying, I think we're in for some shocks. Shock and awe. Whatever that means. On that note, I will start with our Sacred Destiny Oracle card of the week. One that we have not seen in my readings before. And I'm certainly not complaining that we've got it here, because pleasure defines this time to come, and I certainly need it, and I'm sure you do too. And of course these are general energies, so you may already be in this place. Sometimes I'm playing catch up, vice versa, so if you are, enjoy. Luscious meadow. Meadows are usually open, sunny places where flora and fauna thrive and flourish. They are havens, as the trees surrounding the meadow offer protection and shade from the grassy area. Traditionally, they are associated with openness, gentle calm, and relaxation. They are places where the weary traveler can stop and rest to renew his spirit. A meadow is a place where people, as well as animals, gather to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. The sacred landscape wants you to know that you should savor your life, each and every part of it. Take pleasure in slowing down and experiencing each of your senses. Taste your food with full gusto. Inhale the scents of the world around you. Enjoy the colors and textures of your life. This is truly a stop and smell the roses card. Embrace your sensuality. Move in a languid way. Let pleasure be your password into every intimate part of your life. Allow your life to be less about being productive and more about enjoying each moment with verve, and a radiant energy will flow through you, in all directions of your life. And I think it's very interesting that intimacy was brought up there, and that, pleasure and intimacy go hand in hand. And of course, that in our twisted society has been, given the connotation of sexuality, right? That intimacy is not sexuality. Neither is sensuality. We have 5 observed senses and more senses beyond that are less easy to define. And so sensuality is being in touch with those senses, right? From the Wisdom of the Oracle card, interestingly this week, we got a leg up. A cute little polar bear baby and his mother or father, who knows. Number 34. And I don't usually read from the Oracle book with this, but I think it could actually be helpful this time. The essential meaning of the card is receiving help, delegating authority, and interdependence. The Oracle message is that you've come to a point where going it alone is no longer optimal for you. And remember, optimal, that's the word. So that's a self-acknowledgement when something is no longer optimal. It's like we recognize, okay, this isn't working for me, I need to do something differently, right? Life has a way of presenting you with the perfect people to align with, who can give you a leg up during this next phase of your journey. Help comes to you in all the areas of your life where you need a boost. The trick is to accept that aid so freely given. When you embrace interdependence, allowing teamwork and independence to commingle, miracles happen. Now is such a time. Relationships that are healthy thrive on interdependence. It's important to recognize that you need others as much as they need you. You must allow people to support you, just as you are there for them. This is a time to be vulnerable, to speak up about your needs, and to ask for them to be fulfilled. Trust. You will be met with kindness and love. Don't expect others to read your mind, though. Ask, and it is given. Okay, so there's a lot in there to be taken into consideration. First of all, I think it's important to establish that because we have spent so much time working on defining our boundaries, healthy, quiet boundaries, in that mastery, we may also become too focused on separateness. And I think that has been the case for a lot of us. We've needed our quiet space, we've needed our independence, we've needed to have a relationship with ourselves, which is, of course, always going to be fundamental to our well-being and our human experience and the fulfillment of our purpose. But obviously there comes a point where that mastery is achieved to such a degree that it's almost inevitable that we need to reintegrate relationships to the outside world. Intimately. And when I say intimately, again, remember, I'm not talking about sex. I am talking about how we experience people in our lives. Tone, both giving and receiving, context, and it can be being aware of things such as scent. I've been having a lot of that these last few days. Recognizing smells happens intermittently where, and they take me to a very, very specific place, sometimes to memories of things that I would have thought I had long forgotten, places. And I remember just before I meditated, I was very calm in my room, and it's quite warm here in Los Angeles right now, but it was that quiet mid-afternoon vibe, and it really took me back to a place in my teenage years when my friend Elsa and I used to go over to her parents' apartment a lot in Lyon in France, and everything was always so fucking hot everywhere there in the summer, but in But she had this room the building was an old stone building, so it was very, very cool because there was no direct sunlight, because her room looked out over the small courtyard, as most French apartment buildings from, a century ago really were built. So, actually it predates that, it's much older than that. I'm going off on a tangent. Let's just call it Alex show today, okay? So I remember we used to go into the kitchen and we used to like have milk with these things called chocobien or something like that. I can't remember what they were called, but they were these little sandwich biscuits with or cookies with cream filling in between, and I used to dunk them in my milk. Anyway, this is the example of, what does that represent to you? That represents this huge kind of sensual experience. The remembrance is a sensual experience because you had a sensual experience at the time that registered with you, and the emotions that you had from that time, probably like some person that I was crushing on and sitting around blabbering on about that and using the pendulum to does she love me? That kind of crap, I mean, whatever works for you. I mean, I think the pendulums work, but I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is when we get to this point in life, we know ourselves well enough that we don't need to necessarily look outside of ourselves for answers to things like that, right? But the memories, the sensuous memories, obviously have permeated the soul to such a degree that they can come back to you, 30 years later, right? So, I know, I'm going off on a lot of tangents, but that's sort of also, I have to tell you that I have found the last couple of weeks, there are a couple of other people that I follow who read cards, who've actually packed in their cards altogether because they've been struggling with using cards, and they feel as though Spirit's actually telling them not to use cards any longer. That's not how I've been feeling whatsoever, although I do feel that the cards are sort of complementary to these readings now. They're tools, right? And it's important to remember that, because at the end of the day, what this is really about is a soul connection. So, let's see if the cards wish to give us a nice Celtic cross. I will tell you that when I started pulling them earlier, I did pull out the first underlying energy card that came out was the Nine of Swords. So that is, a description of an inner angst that I think that the square energies have definitely been bringing out in us, and it's definitely been challenging, because even if there haven't been tangible sources of worry or anxiety, it's just sort of been sitting there, right? It's just kind of, it's hard not to feel a deep uneasiness regarding the world around us, whether that be the idea of enforced vaccinations that we don't really understand the consequences of, just the constant fear porn of the world in which we live. Everything is so low frequency in our world. If you're looking at it through the lens of the control energies, it's fear, it's this idea of warring points of view all the time, as if there were never any commonalities. Of course, most of the purveyors of this nonsense are the media, and they are kind of the monster, you know? And I was resistant to that too. You know, I used to hear people going on about Hollyweird, you know, Hollyweird instead of Hollywood, just in case you don't know that term. And I'd always be like, no, well, I live in Los Angeles and I've always, you know, looked up to entertainers and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, that veil, gone, right? Because they are a bunch of fucking weirdos, a bunch of psychopaths, sociopaths, like insane people. You know, why would we elevate the most absurdly neurotic people to the degree where what they think and what they say and what they do is that influential? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's completely bizarre, you know? So, obviously we're on a tangent that's worth following because the cards have started to actually come out now, which is nice, because I was really getting kind of worried about that. I really felt like I didn't want to. Oh, well, that's just too many. I can't do that. That Nine of Swords just keeps popping up. I mean, it like literally will not stop popping up. And the Eight of Cups. So again, I think it's about letting go of those things that are restrictive. I think that that's really something that we have to focus on right now, is that we need to get out of this juggling energy, and we need to, well, let's just read these as we go, you know. Okay, so as our underlying energy for the week ahead, we have the Six of Wands. So, you know, that's a strong sense of being back in our power, of, you know, it is a victory card, but it's also an empowerment card. It's like knowing our worth and being able to go about our business in that knowingness. And, you know, when you're sort of impervious to the negativity, you can't help but really attract reinforcement. And it's interesting because what we get in our underlying past energy is baby cards. We get the Page of Swords, so that's coming into a new understanding of ourselves and our ideas and our thoughts, and how this new path towards a new awakening, burgeoning philosophy of life, you know, being in that space, not just in terms of our philosophy, but also in terms of our emotions. We have that. So, you know, if you really think about it, we were getting a lot of Fool energy coming up back in November and December, and that was like really telling us the beginning of this new journey. You know, of course, it would make sense that we have to go through the Page energies. You know, part of the problem of going back to the beginning and being the learner is that we get into this energy, which is the Seven of Wands, which of course actually comes after the Six of Wands, because it's the idea that once we have that flow within ourselves, that self-belief, you know, we're going to constantly come up against other people sort of trying to temper us, you know, in order to fit their comfort zone, which in most people's cases is like, you know, like pretty much like putting a cross up to a vampire, right? It's like, get the fuck away from me, I don't want to wake up, I don't want to know these things, it's uncomfortable, you're trying to make my life uncomfortable, you're trying to take away my creature comforts, my naivety, my ability to just zone out and focus on, you know, garbage. And so we found ourselves, this is actually our first present energy card, which is the Two of Pentacles. So it's that juggling between these two they're not realities, but these two paradigms. You know, we're like literally having one foot in one world and the other in another, which of course those of us that work, we're kind of stuck in that place, right? Because we have no choice. Like, we're out in the world with, you know, having to have a function that is usually based upon somebody else's needs or a corporation's needs and their profit, you know, and their expansion in the material sense of the word. And this leads us where? 9 of Wands energy. A lot of ones here. So this is, you know, how we feel about the life journey, really, is how I'm reading that. The 7 of Swords is telling us that, I mean, we'll take a clarifier on that, but I intuitively would go with the idea that it's the idea that we don't take ownership of our feelings and our needs, and so we try to take a backdoor approach. You know, we're not satisfied with things, and we acknowledge that in ourselves, but we're uncomfortable in making that an external reality, in expressing it. That's really what this is, communication, you know? And of course it makes sense that if our first card in our underlying past energy is the Page of Swords, you know, the Page of Swords doesn't know how to express his or her truth, because it's at the very beginning of the journey. Same thing with the Page of Cups, you know, it's a crapshoot. You know, and if you've already been through it, you can easily fall into this 5 of Pentacles energy, which is essentially where we are at in this current moment. That feeling of, you know, if I'm not speaking my truth, if I'm not actually demanding the things that I need and want in my life from others who don't respect those things, or who are not aware of them, because let's face it, as that Wisdom of the Oracle card stated, what was it, a leg up, you know, we have to ask for things, we have to ask for help, we have to ask for support, we have to ask for our boundaries to be respected, because we can't expect people to guess them. I go through that all the time. I'm like, well, isn't it common sense? Isn't it common decency? Isn't it good manners? Isn't it to be expected? And of course, that's the constant slap in my face in life, because the reality is, the answer to that is no. Expectation is always the enemy. It can only lead to disappointment, anger, frustration. Again, you're expecting 10s from 5s. And what's the point of setting yourself up over and over again to fail? Because you will fail if you stay in that muzzle, that self-muzzling experience. That doesn't work. I wish people could read minds. I wish people pedestaled what I need and what I feel and what I desire so much that I didn't have to ask for it, that it would just manifest itself. And it can, from me, if it's only dependent on me. But if it depends on other people, that's just going to make me or you a giant fighting bitch, somebody who's angry and frustrated, you know? And we're moving into this energy right now, the 2 of Swords. This is that sense of disempowerment. This is the sense that we don't have the knowledge to be able to do what's next, to break ourselves out of those restrictions and ruts. We can run away temporarily from the things that frustrate us, but they're not going away. And again, I will take clarifiers on those cards. I think I'll take clarifiers this week solely from the Osho deck. But we need 2 more future energy cards, please, Spirit. And let's hope that they're uplifting, because 2 of Swords. Ooh. I mean, I already feel that. I can see how that's going to manifest. And I can see how these squares are going to exacerbate that a little bit too. But I mean, when we don't... Basically, the Ace of Swords is your truth. The other sword, it's projection. It's actually the idea of knowing other people's truth, which is impossible. You can't. And people do that all the time. They project all the time. Actually, just earlier today, I was having a text exchange with a friend and like another, well, they're acquaintance, and I don't know, they were blabbering on about how, I hate to even mention these people's names in one of my videos, but the 2 entertainers who will be performing at Joe Biden's inauguration. And of course, I think all of this shit is complete crap. It's like, who the fuck gives a shit about entertainers when it comes to the inauguration of the next president of the United States, after there's just been an drastic opposition to government in what everybody thinks is a great free democracy. And so the person said to me, because I'm a big Madonna fan, as you already know from me quoting her lyrics all the time, randomly, because she is a brilliant philosopher, whether you understand that or not. She ain't no dummy, Madonna. The person said to me, well, you wouldn't be complaining if it was like Madonna at the inauguration. And I'm like, first of all, this is not 2012. So I'm fully aware of the fact that in the current zeitgeist, Madonna doesn't really have very much bearing for the vast majority of people, and that's perfectly fine. Again, I'm quite happy having my own relationship with culture as I feel like experiencing it. But anyway, these were all projections of somebody who is looking at, like me, a 45-year-old man, expecting that I'm going to have a fanboy perspective on the inauguration of the President of the United States. There is a perfect example of projection based upon decades-old ideas of identity, right? I do go off on some strange tangents. I hope that they make sense. I'm sure they do. Actually, I know that they do. They always do. To me, anyway. Well, where do we go from that Two of Swords? The good news is we go to the Lovers and Justice. So that's perfect that Two of Swords becomes an enlightened perspective as a result of the energy the energy work that we're being asked to do and that the universe is going to force us to do whether we like it or not, right? Whether it be through, again, I'll put this in context with the astrology. We have a choice this week. The exacerbation and the amplification is taking place no matter what. That's Jupiter doing its thing. How we enter those Mars energies and those Uranian energies is entirely up to us. Are we going to be in shock and awe, or are we going to be in acceptance? And it's by being in acceptance that we move from the fear-based choice angle, maybe even the feeling of a lack of choice, into an expression of knowingness. In other words, as I always say, and I hate repeating it, but it really is the best way to describe the meaning of the Lovers, the informed choice is no longer a choice, because it's called the Lovers because it comes from a place of love and enlightenment. And when you are in a place of love and enlightenment, there are no choices. You always choose love, right? So the lesson for us really is that we have to tame and temper the inner beast that wants to react and shape change. Uranus is going to shape change for us anyway. But do we want to do it in flow? With the energy? Swimming downstream rather than upstream? Or do we want to find ourselves creating chaos left, right, and center in our lives and potentially losing relationships or going through bad spats with people or losing some form of stability and security that we actually need? I mean, the reality is if we do, then that's just the nature of the beast and it's part of our journey anyway, right? Acceptance is key to everything. And that actually answers me. That's what the Lovers really is in correlation with justice. Acceptance. It's accepting things as they are. Well, not as they are. Accepting what comes to us as opportunity rather than as an irritant or an aggression, right? So we're going to have to do some work this coming week. I'm just letting you know that. And how are we doing that work? We're doing that work this way. This was the clarifier on the Hermit. So the Hermit is, of course, the requirement of going inwards. It's also the acknowledgement that we carry that light. And sometimes when we're dealing with other people and other situations outside of ourselves, and we're in that place of expectation, and we fail to remember that we're expecting 10s from 5s, we get into enormous egoic struggles. Whereas if we remind ourselves of that, then we acknowledge that we carry that light within ourselves. And that is not self-congratulatory egoic shit of basically saying, well, I'm a 10 and you're a 5, so I'm beyond this. It's simply acknowledging that you have done enough work on yourself. You've had enough experience to be at that point. The vast majority of people that we encounter have a mental age, an emotional quotient that is seriously stunted. And you have to question that. You have to ask yourself that question when you're dealing with other people. Do they even have the capacity to understand a different perspective? Because if they don't, it's wasted energy anyway, right? So you may as well just let it go. And the clarifier in the Four of Cups is simply saying to us that, that is where the enemy lies. The enemy lies in our own jadedness, because that's what that card is. It's a jadedness. It's like not actually seeing the beauty in what is on offer. It's not being able to, it may also simply be focusing on the negative and not actually seeing the, very often the opportunity is right in front of us, but if this person and that thing over there are all, like little irritants, and, but there's this beautiful experience awaiting us here, and we're just focused over there, we're not gonna, well, that's literally what the card is, right? I mean, look, that's exactly what's happening there. So think about that, how you're framing your perception of the landscape of your life in the week ahead, while we navigate all of this cuckoo energy. Okay, I'm going to pull a couple of these. What time is it? Okay. You can deal with me for another 10 minutes, right? Okay. For our overall underlying energy clarification, we got the 5 of Cups. That's not right. Wait, is that not the Cups? What is that? Sorry, I have to look again. I'm like, I thought that gray was going, what is this? 5, let's say 5. No, it's the 5 of Swords. Oops. And I didn't even look up what the page was for that. Dear goodness gracious. 126. I would edit these things out, but honestly, I think it's easier to just go with the flow. I guess it gives you the time to go scratch your balls, or get another cup of tea, or shoot up some heroin or something to get yourself through it. I joke, of course. Okay. Well, let's take a look at that card while I read. Whoever told you that the bamboo is more beautiful than the oak, or the oak more valuable than the bamboo? Do you think the oak wishes it had a hollow trunk like this bamboo? Does the bamboo feel jealous of the oak because it is bigger and its leaves change color in the fall? The very idea of the two trees comparing themselves to each other seems ridiculous, but we humans seem to find this habit very hard to break. Let's face it, there's always going to be somebody who is more beautiful, more talented, stronger, more intelligent, or apparently happier than you are. And conversely, there will always be those who are less than you in all these ways. The way to find out who you are is not by comparing yourself with others, but by looking to see whether you are fulfilling your own potential in the best way you know how. Well, I would say that fits very well with all that we've been talking about. And that is the very essence of self-love. Self-love can only exist if we don't compare ourselves to others, right? It's sort of an essential part of that process. And it's hard, but it is what we've been learning to do. And I'm certainly seeing more examples of when I am able to stay in self-love. Even when I want to lash out, it's like I think to myself, like, well, not only is that going to like not make me feel good afterwards to have to deal with the consequences of that, but on top of that, that's not my journey. That's somebody else's journey to learn, to figure out. If they're not sensitive to whatever it is that I want to lash out about, then they still need to learn that. And they're not going to learn it from me, because we learn from experiences, not from people. Comparison brings inferiority and superiority. When you don't compare, all inferiority, all superiority disappears. Then you are simply there. A small bush or a big high tree, it doesn't matter. You are yourself. You are needed. A grass leaf is needed as much as the biggest star. Without the grass leaf, God will be less than he is. The sound of the cuckoo is needed as much as any Buddha. The world will be less rich if this cuckoo disappears. Just look around, all is needed, and everything fits together. It is an organic unity. Nobody is higher and nobody is lower. Nobody is superior, nobody inferior. Everybody is incomparably unique. And, well, there's really not much more to say on any of that, is there? I will take one more clarifier for an outcome. I don't think we really need clarifiers on the rest of it. I think it's been all pretty self-explanatory. So, can we just get one card as a exit strategy for these energy? Oh, that's not going to work, is it? That was the 10 of Cups that fell upside down on the 5 of Pentacles. So, I don't think we want to really be dealing with that, do we? It's there again, 10 of Cups. Maybe that is the card that we need. Fine, I'll just go with it. But upright. I mean, it'll give us a sense of the challenge anyway, I guess. What is the 10 of Water in this deck? What page is that? 10 of Water. 116. Take it. The experience of resting in the heart in meditation is not something that can be grasped or forced. It comes naturally as we grow more and more in tune with the rhythms of our own inner silences. The figure on this card reflects the sweetness and delicacy of this experience. The dolphins that emerge from the heart and make an arc towards the third eye reflect the playfulness and intelligence that comes when we are able to connect with the heart and move into the world from there. Let yourself be softer and more receptive now, because an inexpressible joy is waiting for you just around the corner. Nobody else can point it out to you, and when you find it, you won't be able to find the words to express it to others, but it's there, deep within your heart, ripe and ready to be discovered. Listen to your heart, move according to your heart, whatsoever the stake. A condition of complete simplicity costing not less than everything. To be simple is arduous because to be simple costs everything that you have. You have to lose all to be simple. That's why people have chosen to be complex and they have forgotten how to be simple. But only a simple heart throbs with God hand in hand. Only a simple heart sings with God in deep harmony. To reach to that point, you will have to find your heart, your own throb, your own beat. Well, thank you, Spirit, because that is so on the nose from everything that we've just been talking about. I do so appreciate these insights, right? It makes it so much easier for us. That's it. I have nothing else to say. I'm completely satisfied with that full circle approach. So, may the Force be with you, because we're going to need it. But we also know from Spirit that we can do this. Well, I guess I'll be ending on that because I completely forgot, and I guess I still have a little bit of time for that. I didn't do our Spirit Animal Oracle cards of the week, and we got 2. So I'm going to hammer through these really quickly. But again, there's a reason for everything, so it makes sense. Because what were the 2 cards that we got this week? Skunk Spirit, number 54, Know Your Worth. And Squirrel Spirit, number 57, Believe in Yourself. So, we really do need that energy, don't we? Skunk Spirit, what do you value? What do you believe in? Is your best, most authentic self on display? Skunk Spirit comes as a reminder that you can be proud of who you are and what you have accomplished. Know your worth. Not everyone will agree with you or share your values, but you can walk with your head high, knowing that when you express your integrity, Others can feel your authenticity and will be inspired by it. Be who you are, and if your reputation precedes you, good. You have much to be proud of, and Skunk Spirit wants you to be your best self. The true you. So, that is in complete alignment with our reading. And part 2 is Squirrel Spirit, believe in yourself. You have accumulated wisdom and experience and are surrounded by all you need. An abundance of resources is available to you through the generosity of spirit and all your hard work. Squirrel Spirit shows up when you need reminding that the acorns you have gathered and stowed away have enormous potential to grow. So relax into knowing there is always enough and you have what it takes to co-create the reality you want to experience. Through diligent preparation, you have gained wisdom and strength. How much potential you have. Believe in yourself, for Spirit believes in you and wants you to know you have enough and are enough. Doesn't that truth make you feel safe and secure? It should, for you have everything you need right now. So Spirit had the last word, thankfully. And I think all of this is perfectly contextualized. So, on that note, I wish you a peaceful, harmonious, focused week to come, and I'll catch you on the other side. Enjoy. Namaste.